If you have been interested in wine in any way for any length of time, you have most likely heard about Napa Valley, California. Ever wondered what all the fuss was about? Today, in this installment of Wine 101, we're going to find out what's so special about Napa Valley. Hi there, I'm Jacqueline, and welcome to Hourglass of Wine. Are you ready to share our glass of wine from Napa Valley? Located on the west coast of America in California, it is just a hop, skip, and a jump, when there's no traffic, from the famous San Francisco. The Napa Valley runs generally north to south, following the Napa River. On the southern end, we find the city of Napa itself. This valley has been formed by mountains to the north, east, and west, and you can find vines spread out all over this area, from the mountain slopes all the way down to the valley floor. These mountain ranges help protect the Napa Valley from cold Pacific Ocean and hot Central Valley influences, and this allows for the perfect conditions for vine growing. However, with the southern end of the valley still being open to the San Pablo Bay, cool fogs still roll up the valley. And during the heat of the day, the fog does burn off and will let in sun. But there are even parts of the valley that will maintain a foggy cloud cover for most of the day. But as a general rule, the closer you find yourself to the San Pablo Bay in the south, the cooler, wetter climate you will find. There are parts in Napa that can be considerably warm and dry, especially the further north of the valley that one travels. And our climatic variations extend into the soil types as well. Similar to another famous wine region, Burgundy in France, Napa Valley soils vary greatly over small areas, with some vineyards even having multiple soil types between rows. Soils can vary from rich, fertile alluvial soils on the valley floor to hard volcanic and calcareous soils in the mountains. And really, you can find everything in between, too. And again, like Burgundy, where wine was once made in the medieval time primarily by monks, here in California, we see the first wholesale production of wine happening from the Spanish missions that ran up and down the coast, starting as early as the 18th century. By the gold rush of the 1850s, wine was a common agricultural element found in San Francisco and the coastal areas. And did you know that even gold discoverer James Marshall at one point started his own vineyard with the money from his historical discovery of gold to the east of the Napa region? By the 1860s, wine had become the name of the game in the Napa Valley, with historic wineries like Krug, Beringer, and Schramsberg being founded. The area saw much growth, but still stayed fairly small until the 1920s. And this was where the double whammy of phylloxera and prohibition hit the area really hard. In the 1930s, the change to grafting on American rootstocks instead of using the European counterparts that were susceptible to phylloxera. And then with the repeal of prohibition in 1933, the wineries that had managed to keep afloat during that tough period were able to restart and really grow the local production. But it was after the 1930s that this area really began to come into its own, with more care and better techniques being developed by the next generation of winemakers. These would include names such as Robert Mondavi. In the following years, production grew, and grapes and styles more or less were experimented with, but a general pattern started to emerge of stylistic and flavor preferences that all culminated into one historic event. In 1976, the wine world was rocked by the stereotype-shattering Judgement of Paris. It's an amazing story, and we could spend a whole video in and of itself on the topic, but suffice it to say that at the time, compared to French wines, California wines were viewed as lesser than. But in 1976, in Paris, France, California and premium French wines were pitted against each other in a blind tasting that forever changed the wine world. The results? To the shock of all, California wines came out on top in both the red and white categories. Specifically, with the Chateau Montelena Chardonnay and the Stag's Leap Cabernet Sauvignon. This led to recognition of the area of Napa as premier for winemaking, and it led to a boom in wineries, grapes, and tourism to the area. By the 1990s and the 2000s, Napa had well cemented itself as an area for fine wine and luxury tourism, a reputation it still holds to this day. And getting into the wines, the United States has a geographic-based appellation system known as AVAs, or American Viticulture Areas. These are entirely geographically limited, with, at the time of this filming, no methodologies or qualitative restrictions being included in the AVAs. They can also be nested within each other. So, for example, the entire Napa Valley has the large Napa Valley AVA. But underneath that, we find 16 smaller AVAs spread throughout the valley. Some of these smaller AVAs on the valley floor are famous names like Los Carneros, Stag's Leap, Yountville, Rutherford, Oakville, St. Helena, and Calistoga. And on the mountains, we see Atlas Peak, Howell Mountain, and Mount Veeder. Talking about the wines themselves, the number one planted grape, and the most planted grape overall in Napa Valley, is Cabernet Sauvignon, accounting for 52% of plantings just by itself. And this wine has become a hallmark of the region, with its distinctive style coining the descriptive phrase Napa Cab. This style leads toward big, structured, deep, jammy fruits. It's tannic, powerful, and memorable as a wine style. The typical herbaceous notes of the Cabernet Sauvignon that we find in cooler regions such as Bordeaux are less common in this Napa Cab style, but instead you want to look for ripe, rich, and cooked fruits being much more popular. Mirroring the red dominance of Cabernet Sauvignon, the second most planted variety and the most planted white variety is Chardonnay, coming in at 13% of total planted production. The Chardonnays from Napa have come to be known for a distinctive, buttery, heavily oaked style in the past. Malolactic conversion, tropical fruits, and small new oak barrels abound for rich, full-bodied white wines. And other grapes planted with their respective production values are Merlot at 9%, Pinot Noir at 6%, Sauvignon Blanc with 6% as well, Zinfandel at 3%, and Cabernet Franc also at 3%. It is worth noting, however, that in Napa Valley, over 40 different varieties can be found, including things like Sangiovese, Malbec, Syrah, Pinot Gris, Riesling, and many others. While Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay have very distinctive and famous styles in Napa, the previous and following statements about generalized styles I want to couch with a few disclaimers. Wines from Napa can be extremely varied thanks to climates, soils, and philosophies of so many different winemakers and farmers that are in the area. We say the following and we talk about styles as generalized and stereotypical views of Napa wines. They tend to be full-bodied, concentrated, full of flavors of ripe fruits. Oak as well is frequently used in some capacity during aging to add extra complexity and flavors, but that doesn't mean that's all that you find in Napa Valley. Given the AVAs, then there's no codified regulation in terms of style or productive method, such as obligatory use of oak or aging methods. This is part of the beauty of Napa Valley and exploring all of these different styles and flavors that we can find throughout the valley across different varieties and from different wineries. We want to close out today with a rapid fire Napa by the numbers. Ready? Let's go. This area is small, only 30 miles long and 5 miles wide. This area in Napa Valley accounts for 4% of California wine production, but 27% of retail value of all California wines. That has an economic impact of over $34 billion yearly. There are 46,000 acres of planted vineyards, making approximately 431 million liters of wine in Napa. Making this wine are 700 grape growers, 475 wineries, and over 1,000 brands. And last, Napa Valley is the second most visited tourist destination in California, only after Disneyland. So what are your thoughts on Napa wines? Have you been there before? Have you tasted any? Let us know in the comments below. And thank you for joining me today. If you learned something to fill up your glass, leave us a like. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more wine content. I'll leave you with this video over here to learn more about wine, and I'll see you with the next Hourglass of Wine. Bye!